Hello, hello, hello. It's Thursday again. It's PitchZone Day. And today we are going to tackle the topic of networking. Networking is such an important skill to have. I remember, and I'm so thankful, early in my career, I had a mentor who told me that make 2 valuable connections every day. That's in 1 week. If you're only working 5 days, that's 10 valuable connections, right? And I leave it up to you to do the math, how many that is in a year and how huge your network will be in 10 years. So I'm totally excited to talk about networking with people that know a thing or two about it. Let me immediately bring them in. The first one, of course, Nathan Gold. Nathan, how are you today?
Super, fantastic. On a scale of 1 to 10 right now, about a 9.5, but getting better.
Okay, 9.5. Let's see whether by the end of the program you will be at a 10 or 9.9. Always leave a little bit room to grow, right? And
Yep.
our second coach, Scotty. Scotty is back today. How are you, Scotty? Also joining us from San Francisco. Everything good?
Yep, I'm well. Everything's good. We have sunshine predicted for a few days, which is really great. Really great for the
Okay.
state.
A little break in the rain in that case, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and we need
good.
it.
Good. And we have also Rick Pollack. Rick, you've seen him, if you've watched Pitch Zones before, you've seen him before as well. And I am really excited to have Rick join this particular discussion because Rick also runs a group all about networking. So I think Rick will have a lot of great insights and information about networking. But before we start, I want to very quickly talk or bring back this online pitch challenge that I'm doing in February. I've officially announced it now, and the sign-ups are trickling in. So if you want to participate, because we have limited seats, it's 32 spots available, and more than half are already filled. So please go to the website sennhauser.com/OPC and sign up. It doesn't cost anything. You don't have to be in any meeting at any given time. This is all asynchronously done. So you do it on your schedule, and all you need is perhaps about 30 minutes a day throughout the week, 2.5 hours. And I promise you, after those 2.5 hours, you will feel more comfortable in front of your webcam. So with that out of the way, let's start the discussion. Rick, because you are amongst us the person that thinks and breathes and lives in networking so much, why don't you kick us off?
Well, one thing about networking, people become very anxious about networking. And I think one of the reasons why is they'll walk into a room on in-person networking, not know anybody in the room. And that really can be a very anxious situation. And for years I was in the corporate world. I would be up on the stage giving a talk in front of 400 people. I'd be totally relaxed on stage, but then when it came time to networking, I was more nervous trying to talk to people that I didn't know. And I think one of the reasons for in-person networking is so hard is you walk into the room and you see a bunch of people who are all in these little circles. A colleague of mine, Robbie Samuels is his name, and he's given TED Talks about this. He calls it bagels. And like you walk into the room and everyone's in this little bagel, a little circle, and you don't want to interrupt. And it's very difficult in a situation with in-person networking that you feel very anxious about interrupting a group of people who are already talking. And that's one of the reasons that in the last couple of years with virtual networking is much more structured. You don't end up in a situation like that where you feel like you're interrupting someone. but it's just really a lot of anxiety in any kind of networking situation because there's so many uncertainties. You don't know what to say, you don't know who the people are, and it's something that you need to do it, but I think people are just very upset or just very nervous about how's it going to go. So I think that's one thing. So Nathan, why don't you add on to that, because I know you've been doing this for years, and what's been
Yep.
your experience on in person and virtual networking?
Well, in person networking, I typically am asked the question that relates exactly to what you just said. How do you break into a group? And my suggestions to all of the audience is, if you're going to a networking event, you're expected to break in to a group. That's the whole point. So don't hesitate to move towards the group. To me, a group is three or more people. I don't personally like to interrupt a group of two people unless, as I'm walking up to them, I see a pained look in the face of one of those people as they glance at me, hoping I will stop and break the whatever's going on there. And I'm wrong sometimes, but usually if they're looking around at other people instead of the person that they're talking to in a group of two, there's an indicator. I take that as a, hey, come on down. If I see a group of three or more bagels, I love that analogy, and I notice they're all with the same company, I will hesitate to break into that group because they're all into their own group. Or maybe I will break in on purpose. Hey, you're all Googlers here. Do you mind if you have a non-Googler as part of your group? Come on in. And then they stop talking about business and they start networking, which is a good thing, right? So it's expected. Just hover around the group, try to make eye contact with somebody in the group, and usually you'll get a visual cue to join us. And if all else fails, just tap somebody on the shoulder, get somebody's attention when somebody stops speaking, and just say, "May I join the group?" And I've had people say, "You know what? We'll be done with this private conversation in about 30 seconds. Do you mind coming back?" No problem. Find somebody else. Come back later.
That's
Yeah.
absolutely interesting. And Nathan, what do you do in situations like that once you decide on a bagel, right? And you're approaching them. How specifically are you breaking the ice?
I am trying to make eye contact with somebody in that group. And I've got this massive big smile on my face, and I'll almost wave, and I'll gesture to. And as if nobody's talking, or if there's a pause, I'll say, "Hey, can I join? Mind if I join the group?" You just need to just get over that hesitation and just break into the group.
Yep. Scotty, what do you do?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I get nervous and anxious going to networking events, obviously in person than virtually. And Rick, good point, because the virtual ones are so well structured. But I do a couple of things. One is, on the way to the event, I practice my breathing exercises. Uh, and I really do. And I'll get into my head, how am I going to introduce myself? I've usually kind of targeted who I want to talk to, but I think one of the easiest things is to get there early, because then you have time to sort of scope it out. You might get to meet the speaker. If there's a speaker there, you might be able to help set up, and it's an easy way to start making conversation and, meet whoever's there early. And that usually, helps settle it. And then trying to think, breaking in, kind of like Nathan was saying, a little bit of a wave, maybe as you're getting a drink or something to eat, or checking out, something in the room, in the venue. You'll bump into somebody and be able to start talking to them, and then say, "Let's go network," right? And then maybe you find someone to go around the room with you. Um,
Oop,
yeah.
sorry. No, no,
I
go on.
Yeah, yeah. The other thing, I was thinking about this because I was talking to one of my grown sons about this, who does a fair bit of networking, and it's like, how do you make conversation that's really valuable, right, for you and the other person? And part of it, you could just ask a question that isn't asked very often, which is, what excites you? Why are you here is pretty easy. Like, why did you decide to come to this event? What brought you here? But also, what's going on in your life? What's exciting to you these days? And then be prepared to answer it yourself, because the other stuff besides why you're there for the networking meeting might be the really interesting bits of the conversation and create a lasting relationship for you.
Yeah, yeah. I think a lot of people, they find those moments actually the most awkward ones, right? Once it gets going and once a conversation is happening, then all of a sudden it changes. But I think really the key or the biggest challenge that people have is, how do I break in? And how do I make a good impression right off the bat? And today, I totally forgot to welcome our viewers on YouTube. So welcome everybody on YouTube. And we are simultaneously also streaming for the first time on Facebook. So everybody who's joining us live, hello. And Massimo actually had a comment here. I asked in the comments, what are your challenges? And this is what Massimo said. Especially if the other ones are more experienced, I think we all feel the equivalent of the imposter syndrome, meaning, why should the other person be willing to connect? That's a very, very interesting question. Who wants to give an answer to Massimo on this? Why should another person be willing to connect?
Oh, I
Yeah.
thought Rick was. I'll take it. Sure. Well, it's interesting when you take the word connect. It means different things to different people. I don't invite everybody into my LinkedIn network, but when you're in a networking event, just walking up to somebody and saying hello is a connection. So it depends on what you do with that connection. So Massimo's question is, they have no choice, in my opinion. When you walk up to somebody or a group and you start talking with them, you're connecting with them with words and your face and all that kind of good stuff. So don't forget that we've made that connection. What we do with it and how we value it is different. And what comes afterwards, obviously, is what most people think about. Oh, I need to make some connections. So make the connections and then determine what you can do with them later on. You don't have to invite everybody into your LinkedIn network or however you keep track of your network.
Awesome. And now I'm pushing the right button. Here is Rick.
Okay. Yeah, and I think that's a mistake a lot of people make at networking events is they'll be selling. They'll put too much pressure on themselves and say, I need to make these connections. I need to impress this person. And maybe it's with that imposter syndrome. But I think a lot of people walk in and say, "Oh, I've got to meet the speaker. I've got to meet this investor." And I think of founders going to an event and saying, "Oh, there's this angel investor there. I have to meet him. I have to meet her." And you put too much pressure on yourself, and then from yourself, you look desperate, and people can pick that up instantly that you look desperate. And I think one thing that's worked for me is just coming up to someone and saying, hey, nice to meet you. Uh, Tell me, what would you think, this evening when you get home, and you say this event was a success because, what would make this event successful for you? And I think it gets them to thinking. They said, gee, I'd really like to meet someone who can. And then you, as someone who can provide value for them, you can say, hey, I can introduce you to someone in my network. So I think just asking someone what would make the event successful for them, or why are you here? Who would you like to meet? And maybe it's someone that you're not meeting at that particular event, but you're meeting people who can introduce you. And I think that was the first mistake I made when I was out on my own, left the corporate world. I was assuming that I would meet people at a networking event who would hire me. And it's not. You're meeting people at a network event who will refer you or who can introduce you to someone. So I think that's just the one off part of it that people don't really understand at first. They just put too much pressure of saying, I won, I got 40 business cards and you only got 30. That's not what networking is about. It's making some connections and having people understand what you do and know how to refer you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. I also think when I remember when I get through my nerves and I remember once I'm there that everybody else is at a networking event, that we're supposed to be mingling. And I often think of it like, you remember the bumper cars at the county fairs here? Like you get in bumper cars and you You bump, and some people you bump into more often because you like them. And people like to work with people they like. People like to refer people they like. So you have to get a conversation going that's really interesting, and be honest and genuinely curious. Even if it's a topic that's not all that interesting to you, try to find something that's interesting. So if somebody's had problems with their dog or their cat recently, and they're going on and on and on about an issue with a pet, try to be empathetic, try to learn something, make it interesting for yourself, make it interesting for them. And then after that, you might find that this other topic is the one that makes you memorable to them. And then they may introduce you to the person who will introduce you to either the concept or the person that makes your, rocks your world for whatever you're trying to do. So you have to just screw up your courage. I hope it's okay to say that. Like, build up your courage, have confidence with your courage. And another thing that I do to prepare myself for that is I actually, when I research the event I want to go to, I'll do research on the group putting it on. Not a lot, but just a little bit, and research on any speaker, other people that I know are likely to be attending, whether they're founders or investors, or HR people, depending on what kind of networking event it is. And also, if English isn't your first language, look up your key vocabulary around whatever the event is. Make sure you can pronounce those things clearly. You need to do your breathing exercises and posture exercises, even like a simple power pose like this. You can run into the bathroom and do a power pose for a minute or two, just to help you with settling your body and gaining your confidence. And then once you start talking to one person, it should start to roll. But make it fun for yourself. I mean, that's the other thing. If it's not fun, who wants to go do another one?
I was actually waiting for that key word, fun, right? Make it fun. And since you just mentioned the preparation and doing a little bit of research, Scotty, I saw you had a LinkedIn post, I think yesterday, where you summarized 3 of your top tips or hacks. Not everybody has seen that post. So what were those 3 tips? The first one you just mentioned.
Yeah, I just talked about, picking the event and doing a little bit of research and using American English dictionaries if English isn't your first language. It's a free resource out there, and it's super helpful. The second one is I play this little game with myself, and the game is that I have to meet enough people to find at least 3 that I really want to stay in touch with. So I force myself to talk to a number of people about a whole variety of things, so that I can at least get those 3 that I do want to add to my LinkedIn network, or that I do want to follow up with, have a meeting with, have a cup of coffee with, etc. Mm-hmm. And then I kind of mentioned this earlier, but I just, I commit to making every conversation valuable. And that's what I was alluding to earlier. Really safe subjects. If you're really nervous and you're not sure what to talk about, super safe subjects are the weather, food, music, the venue, and even funny cat videos if there's been something out there in the news. Like, I don't know if you all remember during the pandemic, there was the lawyer who ended up with a filter on his camera where he was a cat, and he had to attend a deposition and he couldn't get the filter off. So, you could bring up something that's funny that you saw out in the world, and then conversations start to roll, and that's really, really helpful. And that, when I started doing that, probably like 6 years ago, when I was doing a ton of networking, it just made it more fun. And I felt like, I'd accomplished something on the way home. So those
Excellent.
are my top hacks. Yeah.
Excellent. And while you're still here in focus, Massimo had a comment here on YouTube that he really, really likes what you said about that people love to talk about themselves, right? Make it about them and not you. And with that, Nathan, you probably have some very, very good insight here.
It's exactly what I believe is the most important way to face a networking event. Is most people go into these events thinking, how can I find people to help me either today or in the future? I recommend, if you just want to think differently at these events or anytime you're networking, whether it's not a formal networking event. Maybe you're at a coffee shop and you're at a table with somebody else, and that's a networking event opportunity. Take the word me out of that sentence and see how can you help them. Like Claudio or Scotty said a moment ago, always provide value. If you want to provide value to the people that you're meeting in a networking event, and it's the first time you've met them, they will not forget you if you provide some value to them at that moment or in that conversation. So how do you do that? You can't be talking. You shouldn't be the one talking. To me, networking events are one of my favorite things to go to. And I had trepidations also. I never liked being the center of attention, having people ask me all these questions, and I'd be talking about myself. I think even though we like to talk about ourselves, I'm more about learning from other people. And I don't believe we can learn from someone else if we're doing the talking. So here's my secret to networking, and it works. It has been working for 45 years since I learned it. Get yourself a good set of questions, whether they're wind and weather questions like Scotty mentioned a moment ago, or whether they're more deep and revealing type questions that Rick was alluding to earlier. Once you build trust with somebody, you can go to some real deep and revealing questions. And when you ask the right questions, all you need to do is listen. And 85% of my interactions at networking events are listening. And people come up to me afterwards and say, Nathan, it was so great to meet you. Come here. I want you to meet my friend. And I go over and meet their friend and they say, you got to meet Nathan. Boy, he blah, blah, blah. And I have barely said boo about me. It's all been questions and listening. So the key, in addition to asking questions and listening and asking more questions, is to make sure that when you go to one of these events, or anytime, you have a absolutely jaw-dropping one-liner. When somebody says, "So Nathan, what do you do?" Give that one-liner and let people go, "Wow, wow, I want to know more about that." And maybe they ask you a question, or you ask them a question, and now the interactions and the networking can go anywhere. So have that introduction sentence, statement, as some people like to call it, to you. You'll be a listener,
Yeah.
but because they know what you do.
Yeah. Right. And I'll add on to that because this is a good transition into what to say and whether it's in person or virtual. Uh, and actually, a good resource is from one of our other coaches. Susan Trumpler has a great video out on YouTube and about elevator pitch, what to say when people say, what do you do? And
Mm,
she has a great structure that she recommended. And the way to say it is people come to me when they need help doing something. So I think her example was a weight loss coach. People come to me when they need help fitting into those dresses in the closet that don't fit anymore. But
right.
that way people can remember it of, people come to me or people hire me when they need help. So
Yep.
that is memorable because again, it's not about you. People will say, "Oh, I know someone who needs help with that." And I think it's easy to do, it's a little harder to do in a structured virtual networking. But one thing that can help in virtual networking, if you're on Zoom, if Nathan's on Zoom and it says Nathan Gold, he could put in Nathan Gold / demo coach. You can edit your name on Zoom in most cases, unless the host has disabled that. So you have a little description of what you do so people can remember. And another thing you can do in Zoom, again, to add value, is like we're talking here, and I just mentioned Susan Trumpler's video. I mentioned Robbie Samuels' talk about bagels. If you're in Zoom, you could put that into the chat and then it would say Nathan Gold demo coach, put in the link to this video, and that's the chat to everyone in Zoom. So if you do that, you are adding value even without saying a thing. You can put that in even just with your name tag. So those are a couple tips that I found that have been very effective in virtual networking, of making sure people understand what you do, can see that from your name tag of what you do, and then you're the helpful person putting things into chat to help people find the links, the direct link, for a good resource.
Yeah. I think the hardest time is when you arrive. So when you first get there, you just have to like break the ice and breathe and like walk into the room. Because I have typically gone to these networking events by myself, unless Nathan and I happen to go to one together. And so getting started there is hard. And I think I mentioned this earlier, but getting there early, you can get the lay of the land, you can help people is so much easier, and then you're not stressed out. And then after, if there's a speaker or after, some announcement, then it's really easy to say, what did you think of Claudio's talk? I love the part where he talked about, how founders can pitch, and he said these things. Have you had to do that? Boom. Then you flip it over to the other person. And as Nathan was saying, being a good listener is key. For a variety of reasons. You learn a lot. And also, we know most people like to talk about themselves quite a bit. So I don't know if I can use this analogy elegantly, so I'm hoping you guys will help me out with this. But, you've all heard this. You have to, for traditional women, I guess, you have to kiss a lot of frogs before you find your prince or princess. You have to kiss a lot of frogs at these events until you find the three, which is always my goal, right? Like if I can find three worthy connections, even if it was just somebody who I thought was really interesting, maybe they're an artist and they came because a friend of theirs is presenting. I mean, you just never know. But then that way, maybe I'll get invited to a gallery event. It may have nothing to do with my career or my work, but it could be a really good self-interest or something that I'm really interested in. So if I go in with that attitude that I'm going to have to kiss a lot of frogs before I find my prince or princess, I'm okay with that.
Speaking of kissing frogs, it reminds me of one of my connections that I met quite a while ago. And she said that her secret to networking and finding those frogs, so to speak, to use your analogy, is to hang out by the food and drinks until you see somebody you want to meet and greet, or they happen to say something to you, or you can say, hey, that thing right there, that's delicious. And next thing you know, you're in a conversation with somebody. And I tried it as soon as I learned that from her. And I got to tell you, it kind of works. Just hang out, whether you're drinking or eating, and wait for somebody to look up at you and say, hey, how you doing? And now you got they started it. So you just continue. It's kind of fun.
Wow. And again, fun. Let's make these events fun. Fun, right? Now, Stuart joined us on YouTube as well, and he had a question about introverts. What are your tips for introverts when networking? And because, there are so many different personality types, and I know people, they thrive on networking events. They are participating in as many as possible, and it's almost a hobby for them. But then other people, they have to go because their boss told them to go, and they are an introvert, and all they want to do is hide in the corner, and they just wait until this thing is over and they can go home again. So what are your tips, Nathan, Scotty, and Rick, to help introverts with networking? Can I put you on the spot here, Rick?
Yeah, and I consider myself introvert. I know when I was in the corporate world, when there was a dinner and networking before, the networking was from 6 to 7 and dinner started at 7, I would show up at 1 minute to 7. I just did not want to do any kind of small talk or networking because I'm an introvert. But I think one thing that got me away from that is if I'm in a situation where I feel that I can go to connect people, I can provide value, and I'm not talking about myself, that I think will help an introvert more. Of saying, okay, well, I'm not talking about myself. I'm not there to get business or to try to barge in. But if I overhear something and I can say to someone, hey, I heard you say something, I know someone who can help you. And I think an introvert can do that. It's a lot easier for an introvert to do. So, Scotty, what do you think?
Yeah, I think you also have to just get over your fear and just own it. and I love to mention this TED Talk by Amy Cuddy. She talks about your body language and how it affects who you are. And you know, if we're like this, we're not very interested and we're kind of timid. So you have to really check your body posture. I mentioned something earlier about doing a power pose. I mean, even just sitting here and raising my arms like this starts to lower my cortisol, increases testosterone. If you can get your body set up, and I do this when I'm walking into an event, you know, you can do it stealthily, breathing, checking posture. If your diaphragm is working well, you're going to be able to think clearly in every language, whether it's English, the language of your business, the language of the event. And then you just have to figure out a way to make conversation. Hanging out by the food and the drinks is super easy to do. If somebody drops their umbrella or something, pick it up and you have an instant connection with them. You can admire someone's jewelry, their shoes, their glasses, their briefcase. I mean, there are a lot of things to be curious about and interested in that don't even have anything to do with your work or trying to make a very aggressive connection. It's more about being a human and being kind and being like genuinely, truly curious and interested in things. Like, be honest. If you're not interested in cat videos, you don't have to talk about cat videos, but find something that you are interested in with the other person. Maybe you find out they're a photographer, you know, and you like photography, or you have someone in your family who's a photographer. So you have to get yourself settled, fake it till you make it, fake it till you start having a conversation with one person, and then it should roll. And have confidence that it will roll. It'll get easier the more you do it, and less scary. And then, you know, I kind of think about it on the way home. It's like, I did it, man. I met 5 people that I think are really interesting. Or I tried my hardest to meet 3, but there's really only one I want to follow up with. And then I make sure I follow up with them within 1 to 2 days to move the conversation forward, whether it's an email, a LinkedIn, phone call, whatever it is. I really try to follow up pretty quickly. And I wanted to give one little piece of another piece of tactical advice in terms of when you get to an event. If there are name tags, and usually there are because it's super helpful, you want to write legibly your name, maybe something interesting about you or the name of your business. And I think Nathan knows this because we played this game before, but I'm going to ask Claudia and Rick, which side do I put it on? Do I put it on my right side or my left side? You know, Rick, you probably know too.
We'll let Rick
Yeah.
go. We've known Nathan
yeah,
too long, Scotty.
No, and I, you know, one of my colleagues, and I've had her speak at my organization. Her name is Diane Darling, and she has a whole networking guide and a book on that. But one thing she had said about the name tag is when people reach out to shake your hand, you want them to be looking at the name tag. So I think
Right.
that's one thing because they're going to reach out to shake your hand, and they say, okay, well, then the name tag should be when they're bending down to look at that. So I think you want that to be visible. So that's the advice I've seen on that. But there's so many things on that. You know, one thing that I don't think we have time for today, but this might be another coach's tips again. You know, I think of networking as 3 different types of networking: in person, virtual, and social media. And and some people, they might say, oh, I can't go to these events or I don't like them, but I'll network on LinkedIn. So that's more of a conversation for that. But as long as you're doing one of the 3, you want to be able to meet people and provide value. And whatever platform that you feel you're most comfortable with, introvert or extrovert, make sure that you're doing that you're reaching out, that you're meeting people, or just by connecting people from people say, hey, I can introduce you to this person who can help you. Then you're providing value.
Yep, absolutely. Now, before Scotty was actually going somewhere with this, right? So, Scotty, now that we know where the name tag should be, can you continue your stream of thought there?
I was going to say, to close the loop, it actually needs to go on your right lapel. So, because most people will shake hands with their right hand or fist bump with your right hand or your elbow. So, and exactly as Rick said, it's your line of vision. Make it legible, make it easy to see. And then what was I going to say? God, I've just lost my train of thought for a second. Oh, that you can also use these networking events as a way to reach out to other people. And I use it a lot with my clients. Like, I heard a speaker on AI and security recently, and I wanted to share this with you. And if there's somebody interesting that I met that makes a good connection for a client or a friend, then I will use that to continue to network outside of the event. It can become part of your storytelling, right? Your bag of tricks for where you've been, what you've heard, what do you think? Reaching out to somebody you've been trying to reach out to recently who hasn't responded. Maybe you check in with them about this particular event because it was something that they would be interested in. So you can make the networking role even beyond the event, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Another reason to screw up your courage to go if you get really nervous about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you can also stay and help clean up. Most people don't. And again, you'll get to spend a little bit more time. Usually the speaker is one of the last to leave. The people who host the event could be really good connections for you in the future. Maybe they have other events that you want to go to, and you get to know somebody there who looks familiar. So when you go the next time, there's a familiar face. So.
Oh, brilliant, brilliant. It's those kind of tips, help clean up. How cool is that? I mean, it's really those kind of tips that hopefully we'll get another couple of nuggets like this as well. And then one of our viewers on YouTube, Patrick, he made the comment here to use Massimo's QR code generator to leave your networking partner with all of your coordinates. And that, of course, is absolutely right. So maybe Massimo, maybe you can put the link to the QR code generator or the app into the comments so that people can find the app that Patrick is talking about. Now, Nathan, you have a video training. It's a short video training called AHA Networking, and you've done that program so many times live. And the one thing that I always thought was pretty interesting is that you have a networking kit, right? You have a networking kit. What's in that kit, Nathan?
Well, thanks for asking. It's only for in-person networking.
Mm-hmm.
But my in-person networking kit contains a small portable toothbrush, mints, business cards, a small little bottle of cologne, depending on the day, or the time of the day, freshening up a little bit. It's not only for women, it is for men as well. So it's a tiny little kit. I just have a bunch of easy to get to, stop at a restroom on the way, and it's amazing. I just cannot handle somebody that has walked in and they, well, I think we all know that odor can sometimes be offensive, whatever that odor is. And at a networking event, that's probably the last thing you want to bring into a networking event is some sort of odor that's pushing people in the opposite direction you want them to go.
So powerful. And I knew what's in that kit, of course. And, sometimes metaphors that we use in colloquial language are really telling us something. And in German, when we want to say, I can't stand this person or I dislike this person for whatever reason or another, we actually use a metaphor and we say, I can't stand the smell of this person. That's the metaphor behind it, right? But I think there is some truth to it, that smell is actually the only sense that has a direct cortical connection, right? All other senses you translate with your brain, but the smell is direct, which means you smell something and there are emotions that are memories that are coming up immediately. So to me, this is such a profound point that you want to either smell pleasant or neutral. And I know this from experience because I'm a smoker, and I always carry mints around with me because we as smokers may not smell it. And you just smoke a cigarette before an event, and then you go in there, and the other person is inching away from you slightly, and you wonder what's going on. Well, it might be an odor issue. All right. So what other tips can we share? What are the tips that are maybe less usual, less known? Scotty, yes, I see you.
Right. I'd be very careful with perfume or aftershave. There's some scents that just smell horrible to me. And even if somebody is clean, I'm going to not want to spend a lot of time with them. And I don't mean to pick on university students, but I know Nathan and I have done a little bit of work with some university students. And sometimes they're not very fastidious. So, you actually need to comb your hair, make sure your clothes are clean, make sure your socks match. I mean, like those little tiny things can make a big difference. And I think it's milliseconds. I can't remember how many, maybe, 3 or something. Within milliseconds, we all look at another person to decide whether we are safe near them and whether we like them or not. It's like the subconscious reaction. And somebody, might take a look at me if I have spilled something all over me and think I'm not going to talk to her. She's a mess, right? Or if I walk in with, mud all over my shoes, unless everybody's walking in with mud all over their shoes, then it's a different story. But if it's just me and I've come in and I'm, and I'm a mess, I think it's going to be harder to get people to talk to me. So, just take time to clean up, take a shower, wash your hair, that kind of thing. Sorry, students, but I've, being in some of the classes, some of them, it appears, are like barely moving to get into the venue. And it's obvious, it's obvious.
The last thing I want to share with the audience here today is something that perhaps we ought to have started with, which is when we meet somebody, we need to learn their name. And quite often in networking events, we don't remember people's names. And I know there are people listening right now, and I'm one of them. Sometimes I just don't take the time to plant the name of the person I've just met in my head so that I can use it. Like Dale Carnegie says in How to Win Friends and Influence People, the name is the sweetest sound to everybody. Their name is the sweetest sound to their brain. So if you're one of those people that uses the excuse, I can't remember people's names, I suggest to you right now, stop right there. When somebody says, my name is blah, 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 blah. Wait, I'm sorry, I missed your first name. Could you say it again, please? Even if they don't have a name tag, obviously. But make a big deal about people's names until you understand how to pronounce them. I work with 80% clients that come from foreign countries. It's hard to pronounce their not only their last names, but sometimes their first names. Spend time on the name and you will see people's faces light up. Where'd you get that name from? How did that name come to be? Where's it from? Wow, what a cool name. And you will see a total difference and you'll be able to remember it much easier.
Oh, what a great tip to finish our program here today. But we are not yet finished because, as some of you may know, PitchZone is not just a discussion every week, but from time to time, we do pitch reviews. We invite a founder or any presenter who has a short pitch, 2-3 minutes, to come in, present that pitch, and then we provide feedback. So next week, we'll have a presenter again, and it is my delight to bring him in right now, Kevin O'Reilly. How are you today?
I am very well, Claudio, and thank you for inviting me on today. Thank you very much for inviting me on today. I have learnt a lot from Nathan, Scotty, and Rick.
Excellent. Yeah, you were sitting here in the green room watching the program, and I'm really excited to see your pitch next week. Now, without giving the store away, how can you tease our audience about your product, about your company, so that they want to come next week and watch your pitch?
The greatest asset to any organization is its people. But how do you find the right people for the organization?
Okay. So Kevin will show us a new way for organizations to find the right people in their recruitment process. I really look forward to that, Kevin. Thanks a million for quickly stopping in and saying hi. And I want, of course, to thank all of the coaches that are sitting over here. It was a engaging discussion. I think we all learned a lot. So thank you very, very much. And I look forward to the next time we all get together. Now, Kevin, just very, very briefly, Scotty reminded me here in the chat, what's the company name?
It is called Dokimaz Consultancy. That is
Dokimaz Consultancy.
Dokimaz.
All right, and there our researcher is on the way. She's already on Google. All right, so with that, I wish everybody a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, and I'll see you again next week. In the meantime, enjoy, have fun, see you.